Hi folks, welcome back to Physics with Captain Rod. The purpose of this video is to discuss the three particles which make up atoms, which are called the proton, the neutron, and the electron. And the first thing I want to chat about is just the overall structure of an atom. So an atom has a kind of a central location called the nucleus. And the nucleus is where the protons and neutrons live in the atom. And then around the atom, it has these regions where the electrons are, and those are called shells. So kind of a quick little picture or model of an atom might look something like this. So we have the central region here where there are the protons and neutrons, and then we have these outer regions referred to as shells where the electrons live. So for at least right now, you can think of it as like a little solar system. You know, you think about our solar system has the sun in the center and then the planets orbiting. So in this example, the sun would be where the protons and neutrons would be, and then the electrons would be the planets orbiting around. Now there are major differences, but at least for right now, that's a reasonable place to start. Now, before I get into more detail about this, I want to go back and discuss some of the properties of protons, neutrons, and electrons that are extremely important. So let me get rid of this. All right. For starters, two of these particles exhibit a very special behavior. When you take a pair of protons and get them close to one another, they repel one another. And when you take a pair of electrons and get them close to one another, they also repel. Proton and neutron pairs don't interact at all. Neutron-electron pairs don't interact at all. A proton next to an electron would attract one another. So these two particles, the proton and the electron, exhibit a property that the neutron doesn't. Attractive versus repulsive type of force, depending on what particles you have close to them. That property is quantified or described by a property that we call charge. The proton carries an overall charge of positive 1.6 times 10 to the minus 19th, and charge is measured by a quantity called the coulomb, spelled C-O-U-L-U-M-B. And I'll talk later in another video more about how a coulomb is defined. Neutrons don't exhibit this property, so we say that they're electrically neutral, or we would say they have a charge of 0. Electrons have the same charge as a proton, 1.6 times 10 to the minus 19th coulombs. However, when put in the same circumstance as a proton, an electron will always do the opposite, the exact opposite. That effect is described with a minus sign attached to the charge. Now, there's really nothing fundamentally different between a positive charge and a negative charge other than force directions. And the plus and minus signs are fairly arbitrary. You know, the proton was arbitrarily assigned to have the positive charge many years ago, back in roughly Ben Franklin's day, when atomic structure was not well understood. So of the three particles, protons, neutrons, electrons, the protons and electrons are the particles that exhibit this quantity called charge. The electrons are considered to be electrically neutral. These three particles all have a mass, which I'm going to write down here now. Protons and neutrons have the same mass, to about 5 significant figures, of about 1.67 times 10 to the minus 27th kilograms. These are very small particles. Electron masses are even smaller. The mass of an electron is around 9.11 times 10 to the minus 31st kilograms. So you'll notice an electron is about 5,000 times smaller in mass than a neutron or a proton. So in the world of the atom, when you're looking at the mass of the atom, the only thing that ever matters really are the protons and neutrons. The electrons are generally not considered when we're talking about the mass of an atom. Now, an atom may or may not have what's called an electrical charge, and when you're looking at the charge of an atom, you're looking at these two, the protons and the electrons. All right, I'm going to I think I'm going to just pause or stop that right there. This was just meant to be an introduction to a structure of the atom, and an atom is made up of these three particles: protons, neutrons, electrons. The protons and neutrons are in that central region called a nucleus. The electrons are in the outer regions, which are called electron shells. The proton and electron, the proton and the electron exhibit this repulsive or attractive property, and that's quantified by this property called charge. So the protons and electrons are what we would call charged particles. The 1.6 times 10 to the minus 19th coulombs is what's called the fundamental unit of charge. It's the smallest charge, it's the smallest quantity that charge comes in if the proton, neutron, and electron is as small as we dig into, I guess, so to speak. It turns out the protons and neutrons are made up of smaller quantities called quarks, but here in this class we're not going to dig any further than the proton, neutron, electron size range. So I'm going to stop this video right here and then start another one.